Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to The Only Podcast. My name is Chris Vanini, your host, as always, and I'm joined by the OnlyColors.com managing editor, Joe Toohey. We're coming off a Michigan State Big Ten championship win. Got a lot to talk about there. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for the playoff. I got my tickets. I bought my tickets last night. Got my flight booked.
Wow.
I am headed to Dallas for New Year's.
We'll touch on that later, but good to see you got some energy after falling asleep during that basketball game that we just watched.
Yeah, I missed the last couple minutes of the first half. The second half, I managed to watch the entire second half, which is kind of ironic because it was less interesting. But
I didn't watch the second half. I watched the first half, and that was it. So
between the two of us, we can actually talk about the whole game.
Yeah. But we're going to start with football. Now, you did not go to Indianapolis, correct?
That's right.
Okay, I did.
Instead, I watched it at Crunchies with some friends, but
okay, yeah, I saw some of the tweets afterward. But yeah, it was a heck of an environment. We talked last week about how great Indy is for these types of events, and once again, first class job by the city. It's a little bit cold outside, more than I expected. I didn't bring a jacket actually because it was supposed to be in the 50s, but it wasn't. But a lot of Iowa fans, but not to the extent maybe that I expected, or maybe it was about what I expected. It was not the 2013 game. I know one of the SportsCenter anchors after the game said it was I think he's an Iowa guy, but he said it was Iowa fans outnumbered MSU 4-1. That was not the case. I estimated it maybe 65-35 to Iowa, while I think Ohio State was about 75-25 back in 2013. But the Iowa fans were definitely louder per person too than the MSU fans. So they were, from the ones I sat with, they were really nice. I went with my dad to the game, and we sat in one of the mixed sections, and it was a good time. And the Iowa fans were nice, and the whole feeling though throughout the game, it just felt like a slow death, and somebody was gonna jump out of the way of the train at the last second and not die, and that was MSU scoring the touchdown with about 27 seconds left to win. But it was ugly there for quite a while with the field goals, with turnovers. So I mean, watching from where you were at, what did you take away from the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I would put it is that it was ugly the whole time. But what I took away from it was that MSU can continue to dominate the line of scrimmage against now multiple top 10 teams. Once earlier against Ohio State in Columbus, and then again against Iowa. MSU outrushed Iowa, 4.2 yards per run to 3.4.
And that includes the sacks, right?
Yeah, that's sack adjusted.
Oh, it is? Okay.
And other than that 85-yard pass by Iowa, Iowa was held to under 4 yards per play overall, which is pretty wild, especially considering some of the struggles that this MSU defense had earlier in the year against teams like Rutgers. So it was interesting to see kind of that MSU could play Iowa's brand of football and beat them at it, which was really exciting to see, because I think, and we'll get into this later, but that's kind of more the kind of football they might have to play going forward also. But it's also kind of getting back to the regular D'Antonio identity of pound green pound, right? I mean, that's something that that I think he likes to do in games.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they should have run the ball more. I think the first drive for each team kind of summarized things a bit. The MSU gets the fumble in a good spot, but then a penalty kicks them back. It ends up getting down to a field goal drive, and the penalties in the first half were just killer, and that was part of the reason I don't think they ran maybe as much as they wanted to, because they were constantly in these 1st and 20, 2nd and 25 situations because of two. I mean, throughout the day, I mean, they had 2 offensive pass interference penalties. There was a couple of holdings in there. The first half, especially, they were really just shooting themselves in the foot for a while there. And then Cook throws an interception. It was kind of a weird play that kind of bounced around, but they hold them to a field goal. And red zone defense really won the day for MSU for a bit there. Iowa was in the red zone 3 times, came away with no touchdowns. 2 of them were field goals, and then there was the interception in the end zone. And in the first half there, they were really kind of flailing quite a bit offensively. Cook clearly was not the same player, and they were putting themselves in bad spots, and they were able to hang around for quite a while. And then kind of, I mean, what do you think of the beginning of the game there with the Geiger missed 2 field goals, 2 50-yarders, but they were close. I couldn't tell live how close the first one missed. So upon replay, that looked actually really close. But
yeah, I mean, I thought, it didn't seem apparent to me, and maybe I just, my eye for it wasn't as good, but it didn't seem apparent to me that Cook was not quite right until the second half. So it seemed to me like in the first.
Yeah, I didn't know if he got right at all, but yeah, especially in the first half.
Yeah. Well, anyways, yeah, I thought at least in the first half, it just seemed like there was kind of a feeling out period. It felt to me like there would be a lot more scoring in the second half, given that the teams were driving a little bit, or at least to some extent, and they just weren't finishing drives very well. And that turned out not to be the case for various reasons. But yeah, the mirrored back interceptions were pretty good. And that the interception that Cook threw was very reminiscent of the Rose Bowl interception.
Yep.
From a couple years ago. So, but yeah, to hold Iowa to end up holding Iowa to 2 points per drive, where they got a first down inside of the 40-yard line, which is a really impressive figure. I mean, average is around 4. So under 2, to hold them to worse than a field goal on average when they got sort of deep into MSU territory was really impressive, and especially in that first half.
Yeah, and they were down at half, right? 6-3.
It was 6-3. Yeah.
Geiger hits that one off the upright. He's been an interesting situation. He's been an interesting deal. Whether or not they trust him, they don't. He gets close. He makes field goals. He misses field goals. You don't know what the heck's going to happen when he's out there. And he could hit from that distance, but it's close, because he hit one in that same stadium in 2013. That was, I think, about a 50-yarder that just got over. So he seems to kind of be right there in that same spot.
Yeah, he definitely has the leg for it, right? I mean, the thing that was interesting to me about the 2 situations where he attempted those 50-yard plus field goals is that at least the people who I was with at the time seemed to think that having Geiger take a 50-plus yard field goal was a bad coaching decision. But given the situations, I thought it was totally defensible. The 4th and 15, which was the first one, it's 4th and 15. It's going to be really hard to go for it there, and a punt doesn't net you much. So to me, it seems like the field goal is the right answer. And then in the second situation, it was the very last play of the half. So unless you're going to try a heave, and if Connor Cook isn't quite right, then
the problem with that one though was the tunnel screen on first down on that drive with 31 seconds left. I did not like that call. When you so little time left to call that tunnel screen is just strange. I thought the play calling at halftime, I know, was very much lamented by fans. I thought that play, the tunnel screen, was bad, and there was a 3rd down run by Burbridge, I think, that went. Oh yeah, it was a 3rd and 1. It was kind of like a pitch to Burbridge that went for no. It was on the drive prior. It was no gain pitch on 3rd and 1, and that was another because they'd been run. Because for one, you got Gerald Holmes, and they generally run the ball well. They could pick up the yards they need to pick up. They weren't getting tackled tackles for loss, Iowa wasn't. So I didn't like that call. I didn't like that call. But other than that, I thought the play calling was okay in the half. But those two were brutal. And maybe you get either closer for a 50 instead of 52-yarder, or you end up getting a touchdown or something. But at the same time, we talked about Cook. Very clear he could not throw the ball down the field. And
yeah,
that was evident in one part of the play calling, although I will put part of that on Iowa's defensive backs were very good, and Burbridge and Kings had a very tough time getting open all day. But Cook did not. Anytime he did throw somewhat downfield, it was very off, and he did not seem right.
Yeah, and sometimes, there are times when he can sail passes too, but for him to do it so consistently over and over again was really odd. Just to watch, I mean, for him, it almost felt like he had taken a massive step back from where he was at in the Penn State game. I mean,
Yeah.
it seemed to me like he was nearly 100% in that Penn State game, but I don't know. It made that Penn State game especially confusing, given that, and that the conditions for that Penn State game were not fantastic either. I mean, it was cold. It wasn't rainy, but you would think that cold conditions would sort of make it more difficult to throw the ball to some degree. So just an odd kind of step back from him. But the good news is that he's got a little bit of time now.
Yeah. And in the second half, MSU goes 9 plays on the first drive, but only gets to the 39, punts it 27 yards, featuring a lot of passes there. But the drive after that is when they really kind of started feeding the ball to the running backs finally. And L.J. Scott and Madre London had a really good game too. He was constantly picking up 5-6 yards on his when there was a hole, he was hitting it. L.J. Scott was doing the same. I know we had declared Gerald Holmes to be the top guy, but those two, I was at the game. I was very confused again why they were switching up running backs after Holmes had appeared to clearly be the number one guy. In this case, it worked, but still, they still switched running backs every single drive, even if a guy did well. They're still not feeding the hot hand necessarily. They're still literally switching it up per drive, and now it worked because Scott and London both did well, but that was surprising. And now on the second drive, they feed LJ Scott 7 times, and they get down to the 11 and kick field to tie the game. And what did you think of the running game, the running backs? It seemed to me that they were able to consistently, like I said, I don't know how many tackles for loss Iowa got, but on running plays, I don't think there were very much of any. The running backs were always falling forward and picking up a couple yards when they were there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just been a really difficult.
Two tackles for loss for Iowa, but those were all sacks. So there was no tackles for loss that was not a sack. So yeah,
that's a great observation. So, and some of that is the offensive line too, but the combination of the offensive line plus just how good, I would say, 3 out of those 4 guys have been. I mean, London, Holmes, and L.J. Scott, all 3 of them have been impressive in slightly different ways. But I mean, it seems to me like you could pretty much go with any of the 3 of them at any given time, and they're going to fall forward and be able to surprise you with picking up a few yards when you don't think that they're there. And so it seems like it's kind of a hard question for the coaches. It's a good problem to have with those 3 guys, because if all 3 of them are playing well, then you just kind of have to pick one of them and, go that route. And I also give the coaching staff some credit for not giving up on L.J. Scott when he had those fumbling issues, and then didn't do a great job of securing the ball a couple times against Ohio State as well. And they didn't give up on him, though. I mean, I think in a lot of cases where you've got 2 very competent running backs, another one that is, obviously good enough to be listed as a co-starter, to continue to go back to a true freshman who had some fumbling issues is pretty impressive from a coaching perspective.
Yeah, and we've said it all year. When you, as much as we talk about them not feeding the hot hand. They always have a fresh LJ Scott in the fourth quarter, and that was the difference. That was a huge difference against Ohio State on the final couple of drives. It was a huge difference in this game as well, the final drive. So there's something to be said for that they always do have the fresh guy there down at the end. MSU's after they tied at 6, MSU's next drive, they get down to the 27, but then an offensive pass interference backs them up, 3rd and 18, results in another field goal. I think on that one, I was told that it was a bad call, maybe the first one. I haven't seen the whole broadcast since, but there was one where it wasn't. I was told there wasn't anything, and it was a really bad call. Did you notice that?
Which play was this again?
The offensive pass interference. I don't know the first one or the second one. I think it was Mike Wilson mentioned it on Twitter. I think he was talking about the second one. Did you notice anything at all when you watched it?
No. I remember the first one from Jamal Wiles pushing off, but I don't remember that second one.
Yeah, it was on Burbridge. That's the one I had. Some people had said it was a really bad call. I didn't see it. I can't speak to it. I was just curious if you had.
Yeah, I actually don't remember that specific play because it seemed to me like that last drive, took up 90% of the game. But.
Yeah. So they get to we ended the third quarter, and the MSU fans are in the stadium. They're excited going to this fourth quarter. The Iowa fans were silent, even though it was only a 9-6 game. You could feel the momentum on MSU's side going into that fourth quarter, and then to prove how valuable momentum is, Iowa takes one play, goes 85 yards for a touchdown, and the Iowa fans go bananas. That was the loudest the place was all night. And it was like, and you saw it, and it was just like, okay, they remembered that you're supposed to pass deep on this defense, and people keep forgetting that. And then the very next drive for Iowa, they go deep a couple times, get a holding penalty, try deep a couple other times, and you could just see the light bulb go on in their heads, like, oh, we need to pass deep on these guys. And then they started to a little bit, but MSU did recover and only gave up the one big play and the holding penalty. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I'm obviously that one big play, that 85-yard pass was like, Iowa only had fewer than 300 yards of total offense in this game, I think, right? And so that 85-yard pass was something like a third of all of their offense, if not a little more. So yeah, I mean, it was like, well, here's the 2014 MSU defense again.
Well, the 2015. I mean, you think about the Nebraska game, and you wonder why. And the same questions we had against Ohio State, like in Michigan. Why didn't Michigan try to pass deep more? Why didn't Ohio State try to pass deep more? We all know this defensive backfield has struggled, and Iowa just decided not to until they remembered that they can, and then they really tried to. But MSU covered it well on the next drive, and Iowa never got the ball back until the very end. So they scored a touchdown. They only had one real drive the rest of the game. So, if they try those deep balls a little bit earlier, who knows what happens, because by the time they remembered it, they ran out of time, and then MSU made sure they didn't get the ball back till it was about over. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much of that ends up being just they forgot to do it.
I mean, I don't think they literally forgot, but it was very clear when they got one, they realized, okay, let's do this more. And I actually had Wi-Fi on my phone at the thing, and I saw the reaction on Twitter where everybody was like, oh yeah, you can pass on deep on these guys. And someone, Matt Brown from Sports on Earth, I tweeted, Iowa remembered MSU's weakness, and Matt Brown from Sports on Earth tweeted CC at Ohio State Athletics.
Right.
Like, yeah, they didn't do it. They didn't do it much at all. And for some reason, these teams just haven't. And the one team that did, Nebraska, you had Tommy Armstrong throw for 320 yards if they could. So I know it's not always in these teams' game plan. Like I was not a deep ball team, so it was kind of out of their style. But when it was there, they decided to keep going back to it. But so the next one, They throw the next drive, Iowa's next drive, deep ball holding penalty. Then there's a deep ball that goes incomplete, and then they punt. Well, they get to 4th and 2 at about midfield. They put the offense on the field, but then they decided to take a penalty and punt, and they didn't get the ball back until the end. And when MSU got the ball back, my dad goes, "All right, we need a 9-minute drive here." And
so hold on. Before you say, because I think this is sort of important, or was important, I think that Iowa wanted to go for it on that 4th and 2. I don't think that they did not take a delay game intentionally. I think that they took a little time to figure out what they were going to do. They were going to go for it. They had the offense out on the field. They were trying to get the snap off, and they just weren't able to get the playoff in time. And
I think they were thinking about it, but then I watched a 60-second replay of it, and maybe my memory is off, but I don't think they were lined up to go for it. I think they were lined up. Yeah, there were no timeouts, so I think they were thinking about it and opted to take the penalty and punt. There might have been another one. I'm pretty sure the one at the end, they didn't put anybody out there. You could tell they thought about it, but then opted to take the penalty and kick.
No, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering too, but I thought that they wanted to go for it, and they ended up taking the delay of game unintentionally, and then punted. But I mean, to me, so one of two things. Either so my memory of this game apparently isn't as good as I thought it was, but either that's a huge delay of game penalty, or I think it's a really bad move by Iowa's coaching staff, because if you get a first down there in MSU territory with a chance to extend the lead or even get a field goal in that situation is huge. Obviously, knowing what happens later in the game, but knowing that MSU's needs to score at some point, needs a touchdown, an additional field goal there is valuable. So I mean, to me that would have been if they did take the delay of game intentionally, they should have gone for it there.
They took it intentionally, but I don't know if it was they were I don't know. I mean, I would have to ask them, but I don't know if they were wavering and then too much time had left, or if they straight wanted to take it from the beginning. I don't think they would want to do that. So I don't really know who it's on and what's on that. But I have to imagine they thought they were going to get the ball back with less than 27 seconds left. So
right.
And so my dad says let's get a 9-minute drive here, and when it's going on, it does, you don't realize that was the whole drive, because you had several reviews, you had in subsequent commercials there were 3 reviews on the drive. For one, there was a penalty somewhere, a holding penalty on MSU on a run. I don't know how long it took in real time, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was at least half an hour for what, and it was just picking up little bits. Like I said, there were no tackles for loss, but there were no big plays either, and they converted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 third downs and the 4th down, all on that drive. And the first third down was the pitch to Josiah Price, which I didn't like that call at the time. It worked. What did you think of that one? The shuffle past the tight end. It just brought up memories of Nebraska and the end around. What do you think of that play?
So given the situation at that point, right? I mean, there's still 8 minutes left in the game.
Yeah, and they're at their own 24 on that play.
Yeah, and so I felt pretty good about it. It seemed like a pretty good call to me at the time, and then in retrospect, obviously it looks great. But 3rd and 4, what I like about it is that it's sort of an in-between down, right? You could theoretically run the ball there and pick up a first down, but if that Connor Cook isn't 100%, and that's probably not the exact type of play that I was looking for on that, in that situation on that play. So I like it. If it goes poorly, I'd probably say that it's a bad play call.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So next set of downs, they get a holding penalty to push them back to 2nd and 13. And the very first play, they go with a wildcat pitch to R.J. Shelton. You already know my feelings on the wildcat. I think they use it maybe 3 or 4 times. It generally works. I couldn't believe that they lined up in wildcat on this drive, but I thought it was going to be a pitch back to Cook for a throw, like the 2010 Michigan game, when they lined up wildcat and pitched it for a pass. But it was actually a pitch to Shelton, who picked up 10 on the play to set up a 3rd and 3. LJ Scott rushes for 4, and he on this drive he just showed everything that he's shown all year. He falls forward, he hits the hole quickly. He gets upfield quickly for a powerful guy, and that's, I think, what makes him different than Le'Veon Bell. I think Bell was more shifty, but he didn't have that quick burst to hit the hole that Scott does, and he hits it real quick. And so next one, they're at a 3rd and 8. Oh, they're at a 2nd and 8. And the old illegal touching penalty comes back into play. And looked like the right call to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought so. It seemed like they could have ruled that he had reestablished himself before catching the ball, because it did seem like he might have gotten his foot back in, but ultimately, I think they probably got it right.
I thought it was less legal touching than his catch against Ohio State. I don't know how the hell that one counted. Well, that's what made me think this one might count. Like maybe because that was the same officials from the Nebraska game, correct?
Oh, I don't know.
That's what I was told. That's what I thought, but I was wondering. I thought I heard that before the game, and I was like, well, maybe they'll give MSU a break or something like that, but they did not.
But this is now the 3rd time after that Nebraska game that illegal touching has been, a thing in an MSU game.
It was the Ohio State one. There's that one. What was the other one?
Penn State. So when Burbridge had that crazy catch where he got hit, that was also. I mean, he stepped out of bounds there and then reestablished himself.
So Burbridge, he's got some. He's been involved in a number of those too.
Yeah, which makes it. I had the Big 12 Refs, which is a great Twitter account, tweet at me about the fact that they'll be reffing the Cotton Bowl, and I'm going to be looking for an illegal touching call somewhere in that game. But
so then sets up 3rd and 8, and Cook does what he does on 3rd downs. A perfect pass to, maybe not perfect, maybe we could have got some more zip on it, but fits it right into a tiny hole. Burbridge makes the grab and holds on, takes the hit, knew he was going to take the hit to pick up. That was maybe the biggest play of the drive, that 3rd and 8 completion. And it's a difficult one. And that catch was Burbridge's 80th of the season, which set a new MSU single-season record. So it was kind of fitting for it to come on something like that with all the catches that he's made this year. And that got them finally inside the 40. And there's one. Then it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 LJ Scott rushes in a row before the 4th down. And there's one in there where I think it's a 2nd and 7 or something, and Scott looks like he's about to get tackled for 1 yard, and he makes an unbelievable cut and breaks a guy's ankles. Gets up field in a hurry to turn a 1 yard gain into about 6. And you don't normally see a defensive back get his ankles broken in the pocket. But that's what he did. It was an unbelievable run to set up the 4th down. And so on this 4th down, I said to the people by me, I said, this is going to be an option. It's going to be an option. Were you surprised by the call? Did you like the call? You expect the call on the 4th down?
So I did not expect it. What I expected there was just another LJ Scott run. I figured that the thought was going to be like Stanford style, like, look, this is who we are. If we can't get these 2 yards, we don't deserve to win the game. Kind of theory there. But I did like the call because I think when you give yourself that extra blocker, and force a defender to defend the quarterback there. You gain a little bit of an advantage as well. I did like the call. I thought it was a gutsy play by Connor Cook. For him to lower his bum shoulder to pick up those 2 yards, risking millions of dollars in NFL money potentially, was gutsy, and I really liked it. And I think that's a play where anybody who is a Connor Cook hater, of which there are now many, you can point to it and go and say, like, look, this is real leadership on this play given the situation, and knowing that he's not 100% and playing on an injury. But I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it made me. I thought that play was coming. I thought of they kind of ran the same deal against Ohio State on a 4th down. Because it's 2 yards to go, I think you kind of give the QB that option. Although Cook kind of implied that he had no intention of pitching it, while I think Tyler O'Connor would have been much more opt to. And live, I thought he got it good. On TV, it looked like he got it good. But then you always wonder with the way college football reviewed had gone, that you never knew what was going to, when they were measuring it. I said to an Iowa fan, I said, it doesn't even matter if he got it or not, because they're going to review the spot, I'm sure. And they did. And after that play, though, I thought MSU should have let more clock. I think that was about 2 minutes, a little less than 2 minutes left after that. And I thought they should have let a lot more clock run than they did, because they were only going to get 4 plays, and I think they had all 3 timeouts. So they went up and ran the next play pretty quickly, and Scott got down to the 1, which at the time I said, okay, that was good for MSU, because now they're actually going to run some clock, and they started to a bit. And then when he gets stopped for 2nd down, then you're thinking, well, now they got to make sure they're going to get in, and then you start thinking about that. And then the final run, just an unbelievable effort. He got hit 3 yards out from the goal line, got off one guy, gets hit by 2, spins, and is able to reach for the goal line. An unbelievable run. He also actually picked the ball up when I think a linebacker was diving at him as he was reaching for the goal line, and he had the presence of mind to lift it up above the guy before putting it down. Now, I was thinking about this. If he gets hit there and loses the ball, he was already in. But well before he reached out, the ball did cross the plane. So based on what I'd seen on the review. So if that ball had come out at some point and Iowa would have recovered, that would have been a heck of a review. That would have really been something for that drive. But I mean, what was going through your mind on the last play there? I saw him get hit, and I was like, oh boy, this is coming out to a 4th down play now. I didn't expect that, and then somehow he turned it into something.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the same thing. You just kind of see 3 Iowa dudes on top of him, and then all of a sudden the ball pokes out across the goal line. Yeah, it's you don't really totally know what had happened. Like, it didn't seem physically possible for him to kind of take on the one hit, kind of shake the one Iowa guy to begin with, and then kind of outmuscle 2 or 3 different Hawkeyes who were trying to get him to the ground, and then to ignore the coaching that says don't stick the ball out like that.
Yeah.
And not only to be fighting off these dudes, but also recognize a linebacker about to hit your arm and then make a miss, basically, is just absolutely incredible. And for that to happen, to have a true freshman make that play after 13 previous carries on the drive, is just absolutely incredible. I mean, we talk about the freshman wall that especially running backs hit, because freshman running backs get to play more than some, and that's something that Le'Veon Bell even had happened to him in 2010, right? He was very good at the beginning of the year and then kind of trailed off late, and one theory was that he kind of hit a freshman wall there. To have 13 carries prior to this one and fight off 5 Iowa defenders and make a guy miss by sticking the ball out was just one of the most individually incredible efforts I've seen in any football game at any point, much less with 30 seconds left in a national quarterfinal game with the Big Ten championship on the line. So just insane. Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around that individual play even at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and then that comes back to, like I said, how can he take so many carries on the last drive? Because he didn't have many carries coming into the game. And when you think about a running back like him and the workload and the style he has, you don't want to overwork a guy like him. You know, that was a worry about Le'Veon Bell going into the NFL. But kind of like Bell, Scott doesn't always take on direct hits. Now he's not as good as Bell was, but Bell never took a straight on hit. But Scott has a little bit of different skill set there, and just the reaction in that stadium from the one side going bananas to the other was a pretty neat experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, especially after what must have been the nail biting from everyone on that final drive, because at a certain point during that drive, you realize, you know, shit, this is the game, right? This drive is the game, and I think it's about the time when Iowa starts taking timeouts, but even kind of before that, because you know, you figure like if Connor Cook isn't quite right, then any sort of drive is going to take a little bit more time probably to move itself down the field. Yeah, I mean, once they picked up the third down that was at midfield, at that point you kind of realize like, okay, here it is.
They're going to have to. You're right. They're going to have to get in there on this one, and you know they're down by 4, so they cannot settle for a field goal here, and they're going to have to be. They're going to have to be more aggressive.
I was cursing the you know, whatever butterfly wing flap caused that Geiger kick to miss to hit the sort of the corner of the upright and the crossbar at that point, because if you had that field goal, then you know, it's a totally different thing. But at the same time, you know, you're probably a lot more conservative and might end up giving Iowa enough time to sort of mount a drive.
Yeah, I think the breaks kind of even themselves out. I think the MSU interception in the end zone was pretty lucky for it to land on the guy's back and Cox to pick it up. And then you couple that with, you know, two Geiger field goals narrowly missing, and
the fumble on the very first drive by Iowa. The fumble on
the first drive, Cook's interception. I thought there were breaks each and every way. So you know, it's kind of how it set up. So then Iowa gets the ball, and they rush 3. And initially you don't rush 3 and play prevent. That never works. And yet the box score says Demetrius Cooper forces the sack and a fumble, which was huge because it was bigger than a sack too, because they had to go get the ball. That wasted some more seconds. I thought that was Malik McDowell, but I guess I would have to watch the replay. But it says Demetrius Cooper. So they had a couple of sacks on there, two fumbles off of sacks. Iowa fumbled 4 times for the game, 3 times if you don't count the last play. And so they got to Beathard a couple of times, and so then they get the one last play that goes nowhere. And technically, that was a 3rd turnover for Iowa for a team that averages less than 1 turnover per game, and that was pretty huge because that prevented points on one end, led to 3 points on another, and then ended the game. So those were all big turnovers for MSU, and so they win the Big Ten for the 3rd time in 6 years. How was the reaction at Crunchies?
It was pretty happy, I would say. Yeah, I mean, it was wild. I mean, it was just sort of what was strange at Crunchies was that it had emptied out during the game, which I did not expect. I don't know exactly why that was.
It got late. It did get late, but
yeah, but it's East Lansing. Yeah, but anyways, so yeah, I mean, it was, but no, it was definitely overjoyed. and yeah, very very excited. Singing the fight song and everything. But yeah, it was great. I mean, that final drive is something that you'll never
Yeah,
forget.
and you
ever.
guys, you made a pretty cool shirt out of it.
Thanks. Yeah, it's not too bad. Check it out on theonlycolors.com.
Yeah, describe it.
So it's just a sort of description of the drive, which is 82 yards, 22 plays, 9 minutes, 4 seconds, and 1 championship.
Yeah, I didn't
And
even
it's got the drive on the top.
I didn't even realize at the time, or that was all, like I said, that was all one drive, because there were so many stoppages and it went so slow, and I didn't realize it was one. Okay, let me ask you this. People
Yes.
say it's one of the greatest drives in college football history. My question is, what is a better drive? That or a one-play 85-yard pass? Which one's better? I mean, I know I don't think the idea of the time was to run out clock, but aren't you being more efficient if you score in one play?
So yeah, I mean, it's a philosophical question, because in one case it's a longer drive, right? The 85-yard touchdown pass was
Let's just say the same. Let's just say they were the same distance. I mean, whatever it was, 82
right.
yards. But anyway.
So I think the way that you have to think about it is odds of winning the game before the drive started to odds of winning the game after the drive started.
It's a good way to look at it.
Because if you look at it that way, I mean, MSU would still probably have an advantage prior to, being up 9-6. MSU would have an advantage prior to that 85-yard pass. And then, but at the time when MSU got the ball at their own 18-yard line, with 10 minutes left, down by 4, the odds of MSU winning the game are probably relatively low. Now, there's a guy, let me look this up really quick while we're talking. But yeah, there's a guy for Football Study Hall who graphs those things. But yeah, I mean, in terms of a drive, I mean, I'm biased, but I would definitely say
I mean, that's a good way to look at it, because the way I had been thinking about it is, MSU had to convert 4 or 5 third downs and a fourth down, and if given the choice, I imagine they'd rather get a first down before that. So they kind of it took longer. They put themselves in some situations that I'm sure they wouldn't have been. Retrospectively, I think, yeah, you can say that, but I guess as it's going on, maybe it's a different view. So I like the way you put it, though, that your odds of winning before and after the drive, but 22 friggin' plays. I mean, that apparently is only, I think, 4 plays short of the FBS record. I think Navy had a 26 play drive in like 2004 or something like that. So heck of a drive. And so yeah, MSU wins, and they're going to the college football playoff. But before that happened, Connor Cook had to go get up on stage and slap Archie Griffin, punch him in the gut, and take the trophy away from him, causing a huge uproar. Now, Joe, should Connor Cook be suspended from his first year in the NFL because of this?
I mean, I don't think that's far enough. I think we need to put him in jail and, just throw away the key, right? I mean, how could you possibly not recognize who Archie Griffin is and, devote the first 30 seconds of whatever you were about to say to the player who played the game 40 years ago? Like,
now, see, the way when I saw it, and based on the feeling in the stadium, is that Connor Cook did not deserve that award.
Yeah, that's exactly.
He knew he didn't deserve it, and I just got the sense that he felt he got it on name recognition, and he didn't really like that. I thought he said the offensive line should have won it. I thought LJ Scott should have won it. He's already won it before, so it wasn't a new special thing to him, and he just was like, okay, I'll take it because I don't think I want it. I don't think I deserve it. I've done this before. I'll just take it. It looked bad, though. It did look bad. He knew it looked bad. I thought he handled it fine afterward, and and that was that. But it was certainly something for, when MSU's winning the Big Ten to go to the college football playoff, there's not much you can point to negatively, and I think people found something and latched onto it. But I thought it was handled fine.
So I was thinking about this today actually because there's like a weird amount of Connor Cook
I'll be
vitriol out there.
My computer's about to die. Let me grab my charger. You keep going.
Yeah, so I'll keep talking. So I think I'm going to write an article about this, but I was trying to figure out exactly why there's so much, Connor Cook hate out there. And the best thing I could finally figure out is that the reason that an Ohio State blog would point out, and the 11 Warriors tweet, I think, was the biggest example of this, saying that, it's obvious why Connor Cook wasn't a captain, is because it's probably painful as an Ohio State fan to watch Connor Cook get another MVP trophy after MSU has dealt Ohio State losses to end, potential national championship runs in 2 out of the last 3 seasons. And so starting to get the respect hate to some degree, right? Like the reason that so many people hate Connor Cook is because he's lost so few games over the course of his career. And so, as an MSU fan, when you start to get away from the hashtag disrespect all the time, one of the ways that respect actually comes to the team and to the program and to Cook himself is through Twitter vitriol, because, you're going to find things to hate about players that have beaten you on the court or on the field. I mean, similar things are now happening with Denzel Valentine and opposing fan bases calling him ugly. Like, that's how you know you've arrived as a player.
Yeah, he just looks like that kind of, God, I always forget what the name of that dog that Don Cherry used to have. He looked like
this is going really well. You're really refuting the point.
I'm not. Well, I don't think it looks ugly. I think it's a cool looking dog. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you don't see this. You don't see this. You didn't see that kind of talk about. Well, no, I take that back. You did see that kind of talk about Kirk Cousins after they lost in the 2011 game, and he thought that they shouldn't be jumped for a BCS game, and a lot of people he had mentioned while other teams were sitting on their couch, even though Kirk Cousins is an upstanding citizen who everybody liked, people were ready to jump on something because they just want to. So we've already talked about this Cook thing longer than I think it deserves to be talked about. But
oh, absolutely. I just think about it.
Right, and I thought it was funny. You talk about the captain deal. NFL.com. Former scout had a deal, quarterbacks players whose stock went up and down, and stock down included Connor Cook, talking all about the trophy deal and mentioning the captaincy thing. And the very next line was about Cody Kessler and USC and saying Kessler's had a nice career, but college players are judged how they perform in championship moments because that's when the pressure's on the most. Meanwhile, right above, you didn't mention a single word that Connor Cook played pretty badly in that game. He was
right. Yeah.
He was bad against Iowa. He missed a number of open guys, and if you want to say his stock's down, say it's because he played like crap in the game. And yeah, he had an injury, and I'm sure that was a factor in it. But
yeah, and maybe that's another thing you could say, right? Like he didn't play well, and it was uncharacteristic. But who knows, what this shoulder, throwing shoulder injury and how it could affect his NFL career. Like that would also be a legitimate argument.
I just don't get how the trophy deal is supposed to bring his stock down, and apparently not the fact that he was not good in the game itself. So especially when the very next line is, players are judged how they perform in championship games, when otherwise Cook has been great in championship games. So that's the other thing. Cook's normally really good in the biggest games. So I just thought there's just a narrative out there that just keeps getting fed, and I just think it's stupid. Also, Cook was a game captain, a captain for that game. He was a game day captain as elected by his teammates. So I think that counts for something. Anywho, you want the last word on that?
No, I think I spoke more than necessary on it myself. We're in a Donald Trump feedback loop where the more we talk about how we disagree with it, the more that it's just feeding the beast to begin with.
Yeah. So next day, MSU's in the playoff. The question is, do they jump Oklahoma or not? Do they play Clemson or do they play Alabama? The answer was they did jump Oklahoma, and they do play Alabama. And if you look on the resume, I think it's totally fair. I think you can make the case MSU should be the number 2 team, but it wouldn't matter because either way, they're playing Alabama. What was your reaction when you saw that pop up?
Yeah, I mean, well, there were a mix of things, right? One is that I've got a friend who lives in Dallas, so going to the game itself got a lot easier because it was in Dallas and not Miami. So that was a positive. But I mean, I think my initial reaction was, crap, it's Bama. And then, after some thought and talking to people, it's like, well, yeah, it's Bama, but at least, the style of play might be a slightly better suited for this particular MSU team. So, yeah, I mean, you're not when you make the college football playoff, you're not going to get any easy games.
No.
And if you want to win the national title, you probably have to go through Bama either way. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you about resumes, and that MSU jumping Oklahoma made a lot of sense, and yeah, I think there could be an argument for MSU jumping Alabama as well. The other thing that immediately came to mind was just that thank God that it's not the BCS system anymore, because in the BCS system, this MSU team would have been left out completely, almost certainly, because they weren't going to jump Bama, not in the eyes of AP and coaches voters.
No, especially with the way the polls used to be.
Right.
When people didn't at the top, you didn't get jumped. You only fell.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah, those were sort of my thoughts about that. But yeah, I mean, gonna have to beat the best team in the country, and this is going to be a great way for this MSU team to sort of measure itself against the absolute college football powerhouse nationally for the better part of a decade now.
Yeah, I actually it was funny when it came up, there were back-to-back tweets on my timeline. One from Brian Fisher of Bleacher Report, who said it's a great matchup for MSU and how it plays, followed by Stuart Mandel from Fox Sports, who said this is a terrible matchup for MSU because Alabama eats up pro-style offenses. And I think they're both right in different ways. And we'll talk more about Alabama as we get close to the game. But just initial impressions, if you're MSU, I think you like your chances more of trying to stop Derrick Henry than you do trying to stop Deshaun Watson, great quarterback for Clemson, because we know how the strength of this MSU defense is its running defense, not its passing defense. So you take that. Now, are they going to stop Derrick Henry? I don't know. He's a really damn good player. But I think you take your chances with Derrick Henry as opposed to Deshaun Watson. On the other hand, yes, Alabama's front seven absolutely demolishes pro-style offenses. And I do not think MSU is going to be able to run the ball very much at all. I think MSU's offensive line is very good. They've got 2 All-Americans on there. But Alabama's front seven is just loaded with NFL talent. And I don't know how they're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to have to just protect enough for, I think, Connor Cook to have to win them that game. We're going to see. I went to the 2011 Capital One Bowl against Alabama when they lost 49-7 and knocked out 2 MSU quarterbacks, leading Keith Nichol to throw to Benny Fowler for a touchdown. That's MSU's only score. That was an absolute bloodbath, and we're about to find out just how far this MSU program has come since then.
Yeah, and I kind of think that having that game in the rearview mirror is almost a positive for this particular edition of MSU, because you know exactly what it's going to take in a game like that. Although there's none of the players who are on that 20 2010.
Nope.
That game, the bowl game was in 2011. None of those players that were on that 2010 team are still around. But
No.
my guess is that that has lingered some. And since that game, MSU's gone out and beaten an SEC team in a bowl game. They've beaten other nationally relevant teams in Stanford and Baylor and TCU even. In retrospect, that Buffalo Wild Wings bowl win looks better than it did at the time. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have to play and beat the Alabamas of the world if you want to take the next step as a program. And this is in and of itself huge. I mean, with a new era of a college football playoff, for MSU to be, the second entrant into the college football playoff for the Big Ten ever, is a way of sort of delineating itself as sort of on the rise in terms of national recognition. And a long way to go before this MSU team would be considered a nationally elite program. But this is a start, and it's a step forward.
Yeah, I think they're there. I think they're there now. I think that's why when I was on the Black Heart Gold podcast last week, I thought that this appearance, or they asked me if the Big Ten championship was the biggest game in modern MSU history. I was on the fence. I said the 2013 game was the win that really put them over the hump, get them to the Rose Bowl to reach that peak, and to set where they are. To win this Iowa game would have cemented their spot in the modern landscape of college football, and I think that it has. Well, I take that back. I think they'll get disrespected next year when Connor Cook is gone and stuff. But in terms of a program view, I think MSU's got about all the respect it can get and it deserves. Now, let me ask you this. Kind of have the same feeling with the Rose Bowl. Do you think MSU is playing with house money here? Win or lose, is it all good? Like I like when they got to the Rose Bowl, my only thought was, okay, they got here. They hadn't gotten here in forever. And that's what you got to do to be in the Big Ten, especially with how the Big Ten had been in the Rose Bowl. Everybody got blown up by USC, but they at least made the Rose Bowl. And it wasn't for a championship. It was just a celebration of a good season. They won the Rose Bowl on a last play, and it was very memorable. But it kind of felt going into that game that they were win or lose, they're good. You're going to the game. Win or lose, do you feel like they're good? Or do you think a loss here or even a blowout loss here will change the perception of things?
So there's two different questions that you can ask here. I think one is that if they were to lose, I would immediately, even after the loss, I think that this was obviously a very successful season, both in terms of performance versus expectations. I think all of us kind of picked 10-2 or 11-1 years in which MSU did not make the Big Ten championship game, for them to beat Ohio State in Columbus, and emerge with the Big Ten championship. Sort of regardless of what happens, it's going to be a very successful year. However, because it's a playoff game and because this MSU team is closer to a national championship than it has been in 50 years, for the Rose Bowl, I wouldn't have been disappointed if they lost that game, right? Just because it's basically an exhibition at that point. It's not the national title game. You're happy to be there. But this game is a little different because you have a chance to actually play in a national championship game for the first time ever. It wouldn't be the very first national title that MSU has won, but it's the first national title game. And as an MSU fan that started as a student in 2008, I never really expected for MSU to be on the precipice of a national title.
Right. That's the thing. It doesn't even totally seem real that they're that they're actually in contention for a national championship. Like the Rose Bowl is an attainable goal. The national championship never really felt like an attainable goal. Right,
but that's the thing, though, is that when you're here now, you have to seize it. So anyways, the two questions are like, will you feel like it's a successful season if MSU loses? Yes, absolutely. Will you be disappointed if they lose? Yes. And I don't think, going to that Rose Bowl, win or lose, it was going to be a successful season. Same answer to that question. Win or lose, I would not have been disappointed in a loss to Stanford in that Rose Bowl game. I will if they lose to Alabama, I will be very disappointed. But that doesn't change, the fact that it's been an incredible ride. And I think one of the other things that happened before that Rose Bowl game was the suspension of Max Bulla changed some of the calculus in terms of, what to expect out of the MSU defense. There's sort of a lower bar for that, although, obviously the rest of the defense was very good. So yeah, it's surreal. And yeah, I'm extraordinarily excited to go to the game.
Do you know where you're sitting?
Yeah. So what was strange is that I requested tickets.
You went to the Cotton Bowl, didn't you, last year?
I did. Yeah.
So
and I have worse seats this year.
Did you say you have a friend down there?
So I have a friend from Michigan State who is originally from the Dallas area.
Okay.
So he's got family who lives in the area.
Yeah, that's why I keep going to the Indy games, because my wife's grandparents live in Indy, so that's where we go. So it's a pretty good deal.
Yep.
Actually, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Because they're playing 2 Cotton Bowls in 2015. They played one of the first games of the 2015 season, or of the year 2015, and they will play the very last game of 2015 in the same stadium, which is kind of funny. Now,
and I can wear my 2015 Cotton Bowl T-shirt,
exactly.
Michigan State Cotton Bowl T-shirt.
Right. KJ made the point. I'm curious how it will affect merchandise sales, because everybody has their Cotton Bowl gear already, so it's kind of funny.
Very true.
Now,
but yeah, so
yeah.
What was funny about the tickets was that so I requested tickets through the MSU athletic department, since I'm a season ticket holder, and my request was denied. But I actually found tickets that ended up being cheaper on StubHub, which was odd, because I expected the cheapest way to find tickets would be through the athletic department. But but they are. I mean, I don't know how. So I'm in the upper deck in the corner, so it's like literally
like the very top deck.
Yeah, so it's pretty high up there, but I did check out what the view was like from our seats before I bought the tickets, just to make sure that it wasn't going to be like really horrible, and it's not bad. I mean, it's so I wonder how they're going to set it up, or if the teams are going to be in the same corners as last year, but it's the same sideline, but the other corner is the corner that I'm in. Last year I actually sat in the student section because my friend, who is from the Dallas area, was still a student at the time, so I was able to get into the student section with him, because you could request more than one ticket as a student.
Oh, nice.
MSU didn't sell out their allotment last year, but yeah, it was a little bit different calculus this year. But yeah, I mean, the trip overall ends up being not horrible, a lot cheaper than the Rose Bowl trip I took a couple years ago. Just because flights are a lot less expensive, and tickets were less expensive too. I mean, I spent less on my ticket than the $150 that they were for the MSU athletic department.
Yeah, and I imagine this game will be a sellout, unlike the Cotton Bowl last year, or this year, or whatever.
Yeah, well, one thing that I'm interested to see is, on StubHub, they were selling like thousands of standing room only tickets.
I saw
and I have
that.
No idea how that's going to work in that stadium.
Yeah, because I saw some Michigan folks being like, "Oh, the Citrus Bowl tickets are more expensive than the MSU tickets. Come on, MSU!" But it's like, no. First of all, the stadium fits 40,000 more people because there's a bunch of standing room onlys that are, I think, $150 or like something like that. So that's the reason. Yeah, I mean, you're the one who's been in that stadium, so I don't know how to compare.
Yeah, I mean, there's room for it, but like, I'm not a particularly tall guy. I'm a pretty average height. I'm like 5'9", and I mean, it seems to me like what would end up happening if you had standing room only tickets is you would end up watching the game on the the huge video screens instead of actually on the field, and at that point, like, I wasn't going to spend a bunch of money to travel to Dallas to stand around and watch on a screen, like so. But yeah, it turned out that actual tickets weren't too horribly expensive, which was nice. I mean, it was cheaper to get to this game than to the Rose Bowl, which I thought was surprising. I don't know if Alabama fans have a little bit of suppressed demand because they expect to be the national title game.
Right, that's why I was curious. Are Alabama fans, for one, they've already played in that stadium this season. They opened the season.
Oh, that's interesting.
They opened the season there. Although MSU.
Oh yeah, against Wisconsin.
Yeah, although MSU did play, in January. Also, Alabama plays in the stadium a lot, and like, are they waiting for the national championship game like last year? They've been to these championship games all the time, so that's interesting. I'm curious what that turnout would be, because the semifinals are always an interesting deal, because I'm sure you have a lot of people holding out for a possible national championship game. So would you go if they made it to Arizona?
I would try. It would really depend on how expensive things got there.
Yeah.
And I mean, the good news is that with the new year, I have the time off to take from work. But yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. The good news there is that, like, I think there'd be more interest from MSU fans too. So it would be possible to end up making the road trip, I think, at that point. And with how cheap gas is, that could make a huge difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it just kind of depends. And I wonder too how, if MSU was to win, how many people would be able to make all 3 trips, or even 2 out of 3 trips, because it wasn't cheap to go to Indy, I'm sure, either. It helps to know people in the area, but
we talked to some Iowa fans who they said hotels, 1-star hotels in Indianapolis were $400 a night. So they stayed at a hotel that was like 2 hours out of town. So that's how the situation was in Indianapolis. So I can't imagine the travel elsewhere. So, all right, we'll talk more about the playoff in that game in the coming weeks leading up to it. We're gonna finish this up with some basketball. They just demolished Binghamton and Maryland Eastern Shore. I didn't watch the Binghamton game. Because I was in Indy. I only watched the first half of this one today, Maryland Eastern Shore. My takeaways are that this team remains very good.
That's a hot take, Chris. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I didn't expect them to be quite so dominant defensively, even against some overmatched opponents. I mean, they held both Binghamton and Maryland Eastern Shore to about half a point per possession in these games, and that's pretty wild. Even against really bad teams, to be holding opponents to half a point per possession is pretty good. And one way to evaluate how good the performances were is, what Ken Pom sort of expected to happen in the games, and MSU blew out these teams by larger margins than Ken Pom expected. So to me, that means that they're pretty successful. Binghamton only hit 10 baskets the entire game. They shot something. They were 10 for 60 from the field in that game, and some of that was just bad shooting, and some of it was good defense. But
MSU's still doing this without Gavin Gilling, who's still dealing with the foot issue. So I mean, they're still going to add a body down low. And the good news, schedule wise, is they've got Florida on Saturday, followed by at Northeastern, and then Oakland at the I think at the Palace. I assume it's at the Palace.
Yes, it is.
So some better opponents before they get into conference play. But it's funny, actually, looking at the rankings, and Kansas is sitting there at number 2. So I asked the question, can we now refer to that Kansas game in the Champions Classic? Is that now like retroactively a game of the century, since it was a 1 versus 2 now, even if they weren't at the time?
Absolutely. The other thing is that, you can point to the fact that Kansas just needed to get that quality loss in order to move up in the polls.
Yeah, well, they did add that one guy. I forget his name. That
Chick Diallo, yeah.
That Izzo was glad in this. So that's we're taking that. So basketball team's good. If they lose to Florida, maybe we'll have a little bit more basketball to talk about next week. But till then, anything you wanted to hit on this podcast? Went pretty long, but a lot to talk about.
No, I think we're good. Oh, the one thing is they have not announced a decision yet, but big 2016 recruits Donnie Corley and Lavert Hill out of Detroit will be announcing together where they're going to go, which is theoretically a good sign for MSU, since MSU is the only team to have been recruiting both of them, or sort of been at the top of both of their lists. So that'll be interesting. Lavert Hill was previously committed to Penn State. His brother Delano Hill is at Michigan. And Donnie Corley, when he won some big award, was wearing some Ohio State gear. So it'll be really interesting to see where those two guys end up, because it could be a huge boost to the MSU recruiting class. But
yeah, because after
that, I think
after they lost to Nebraska and lost those recruits, I think the program was just about nearly scrapped. So it's they rebounded.
Just scrap basketball too. I mean, if they can't land the number one recruit in the country, then what's the point of even competing? So
things are going pretty good for MSU sports right now. Now you got to take a break from football, rest up your injured shoulder, and go from there. So that'll do it for us. Appreciate you guys making it through. Subscribe on iTunes. You can follow on Twitter. I'm at Chris Vanini. He's at JOBIN _2 as well as at The Only Colors. And keep reading all the stuff. Got a lot of good stuff on the site. Buy the shirts. The guys there are doing a good job of making those. So that'll do it here. For Joe, I'm Chris. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. See you.
See ya.